The call went out to all, but Deathworlders took it personally. Trade routes hummed steadily, research stations cataloged countless worlds, and diplomats negotiated deals that rarely changed anything. Life, for most species, was predictable. Predictable, that is, until the call went out. The signal came without warning. It was broadcast on every frequency, encrypted in ways that ensured no species could ignore it. Its message was simple, yet urgent. A threat approaches. All species capable of contributing to defense are requested to respond immediately. In the council halls of Core World, representatives of countless species gathered. Tentacled elders from Orcs, crystalline beings from Glacier, and insectoid strategists from Krenth all murmured and debated. What could require all species? One elder asked. We have never faced a threat that demanded this level of cooperation. A holographic map of the galaxy shimmered above the central table, showing a dark, moving mass approaching from the edge of known space. The mass had no name yet, no known origin, but it was large, massive enough to consume entire systems if left unchecked. But among all the species, one group reacted differently: humans. The humans had a reputation. Some called it reckless, others called it instinctive. They had survived on worlds where predators outnumbered prey, where storms could crush entire cities, and where even breathing sometimes required strategy. The Council had learned not to underestimate them. And now, as the call went out, humans didn't just prepare, they prepared aggressively. On the planet Thornax, a human outpost buzzed with activity. Engineers ran between towers, adjusting machinery that others would have considered too fragile to touch. Pilots tested their ships, not just for speed or firepower, but for maneuverability in unpredictable conditions. Soldiers practiced maneuvers that seemed chaotic to outsiders, but were part of a method honed over generations. Commander Alara Voss stood on the edge of the main platform, her eyes scanning the stars. She was tall, strong, with a presence that demanded attention, even in a crowd of hardened veterans. They think it's a simple call for help, she said to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Marcus Hain. They don't know what happens when you push humans. We take these things personally. Marcus nodded, his expression serious. And the galaxy will notice. Humans moved fast. Within hours of the Council's announcement, fleets were mobilizing, not waiting for bureaucracy, not waiting for permission. While other species debated strategy for days, humans converted research stations into weapon platforms, mined local resources to upgrade their ships, and devised contingencies that accounted for every possible danger. But it wasn't just preparation that set them apart, it was mindset. Humans didn't see the approaching threat as a distant problem. They saw it as a personal challenge. Every hazard, every risk, every unknown was an opportunity to prove their resilience. Elsewhere in the galaxy, other species noticed. On Glacier, the crystalline delegates observed human transmissions with curiosity. They act as if the threat is already at their doorstep, one remarked. Why do they move with such urgency? Back on Thornax, Alara addressed her assembled forces. The room was filled with the hum of engines and the low chatter of soldiers. This is not a drill, she said. The Council has asked us to respond. Some may hesitate, others may calculate endlessly, but we don't wait. We survive, and when survival demands action, we act, always, immediately, personally. Her words ignited a spark in the room. Humans weren't just soldiers, they were problem solvers, strategists, and daredevils. They thrived on the edge, and the edge was exactly where the galaxy now stood. Meanwhile, in quieter corners of the galaxy, not everyone was thrilled by the human response. The Orcs, cautious and measured, sent an envoy to Thornax. They moved slowly, their transparent bodies reflecting the pale light of the planet. Commander Voss, the envoy said, their voice like a ripple of water, your fleet is assembling far faster than any protocol allows. Are you certain this is wise? Alara smiled faintly. Protocol is for those who survive on calculations. We survive on instinct, experience, and urgency. We've been on Deathworld's Orcs. We understand threats differently, and we respond differently. The envoy studied her for a moment, their multiple eyes narrowing. I see. Your methods are unconventional. Unconventional gets results, Alara replied. By the third day, the humans had launched scouting ships toward the approaching threat. Their fleets moved in ways other species would consider reckless, weaving through asteroid fields, diving close to unstable stars, and testing the limits of every vessel. Sensors recorded anomalies, but human pilots didn't panic. Every danger was met with a calculated risk, every setback with improvisation. In one sector, a small human ship encountered an unusual energy field. Sensors screamed warnings of overload, navigation systems suggested retreat, and artificial intelligence advised caution. The pilot, a young woman named Sienna Rail, ignored it all. "Not today," she muttered. She pushed her ship forward, gliding through the field with a combination of skill and sheer nerve. On the other side, the field collapsed harmlessly behind her, revealing a previously hidden path, a shortcut toward the heart of the approaching threat. When the data reached Thornax, Alara grinned. "See, when others see danger, we see opportunity." As the humans advanced, transmissions from other species reflected a mix of admiration and concern. "They act like predators," one glacier strategist reported. "Calculated, fast, relentless. Perhaps we underestimated them." And yet, humans were not without caution. Alara and her officers held nightly strategy sessions, reviewing every report from the scouts, analyzing every anomaly, and discussing every possible outcome. But even in these discussions, the tone was different. Humans accepted loss as a possibility but refused to allow it to dictate their choices. Every problem had a solution, every threat could be countered. They simply had to act. By the end of the week, the human fleet had grown. Ships from other human colonies joined the Thornax outpost, drawn by the same instinctive urgency. Even the oldest veterans, hardened by decades of surviving the harshest planets, felt the same excitement. They were facing a challenge worthy of their species. In the council halls, debate continued. Some species were still cautious, hoping to negotiate or calculate a safer approach. Others watched humans and whispered. "Perhaps we have judged them incorrectly," one diplomat said. "Perhaps the Deathworlders are exactly what we need." Back on Thornax, Alara observed the stars again. The dark mass at the edge of known space was moving faster now. It would reach the inner systems sooner than anyone expected. "It's coming," she said quietly, "and we'll be ready. Not because we were told to be, not because the Council asked us to, but because we take these things personally. Every challenge, every danger, every threat, that's who we are." Around her, her officers nodded. Around the planet, ships launched into orbit, ready to meet the unknown. And somewhere deep in space, sensors of other species registered the human fleet. Fast, bold, unpredictable. And for the first time, realized that the humans were not just participants in the galaxy's defense. They were the ones setting the pace, and the galaxy would have to keep up. Night fell on Thornax, but the light of countless ship engines illuminated the sky. Humans moved like shadows in the stars, unseen by the cautious eyes of other species, but impossible to ignore. And as the dark mass drew closer, the Deathworlders prepared to face it, not with fear, but with the confidence born from worlds where death was the teacher and survival the reward. The call had gone out to all species, but humans, Deathworlders, had already answered. And they had answered personally. The galaxy was full of rules, rules about war, rules about negotiation, rules about survival. Most species clung to them like lifelines. Humans, the Deathworlders, had rules too, but theirs were different. Their rules came from experience, from worlds that had no mercy, and from dangers that no map could predict. As the fleets gathered near the edge of the Council's territory, humans and other species came into their first real contact. The meeting point was a neutral station, orbiting a gas giant so massive its storms painted the skies in swirling colors. Delegates and military leaders from dozens of species crowded the platforms, observing one another with cautious curiosity. Commander Alara Voss guided her team through the crowd. Her presence demanded attention. Humans, tall and sturdy, moved with confidence that bordered on arrogance, but it was the kind born from survival. Every other species noticed it immediately. "Keep your eyes open," she told her second-in-command, Marcus Hain. "They're going to try to outthink us." Marcus glanced at the alien delegations. "They already are, and they're surprised at our speed." Speed was only part of the story. The humans' approach to preparation shocked many. Other fleets had arrived with detailed plans, simulations, and endless debates. The Deathworlders had arrived with results. Ship modifications were already complete. Troops were trained for unpredictable conditions. Pilots had run countless risk simulations that the computers of other species couldn't calculate. The first encounter with other species, forces, was almost ceremonial. A joint training exercise had been arranged to assess coordination and tactics. Humans approached it differently. Where others hesitated, calculating every move with their AI, humans embraced improvisation. A glacier strategist observed quietly. "They behave as if danger is a friend," he said to his assistant, "as if the risk itself is a tool." On the simulation field, humans piloted their ships through asteroid belts at speeds others considered suicidal. Ships twisted and banked, dodging falling rocks and weaving through magnetic storms. Meanwhile, other species, fleets moved with rigid precision, trusting algorithms and shield calculations rather than instinct. Lieutenant Sienna Rail led a squadron of humans in a daring maneuver that left other fleets stunned. While AI-guided ships maintained distance from hazards, humans flew directly through them, using the environment as a weapon. Asteroids that could crush a ship were instead used to block enemy drones. Electric storms became shields. Hazards that other species avoided at all cost became advantages in human hands. "Why do they do this?" one Orcs officer whispered. "It is madness, and yet it works." Alara, watching from the command tower, smiled. "They call it madness," she said. "We call it life." Tensions rose quickly. Humans' philosophy of instinct over calculation clashed with the rigid, measured thinking of the council species. The Orcs, who had spent centuries perfecting strategic deliberation, found themselves frustrated. "You risk everything," one elder said sharply. "How can you survive if you do not plan?" Alara met his gaze. "We plan, we just plan differently. On Deathworlds, you survive because you act, not because you debate endlessly. If we wait for certainty, we die. And if we die before the threat arrives, the galaxy loses its best chance." Some species began to whisper, others to worry, but a few observed with grudging admiration. Even in their bold, unpredictable ways, humans demonstrated something rare: resilience under pressure, adaptability, and a refusal to accept defeat. It wasn't just the simulations that proved human methods. Real incidents began to occur. In one test zone, an unstable asteroid unexpectedly split, sending debris in all directions. Most fleets froze, calculating risk and adjusting shields. The humans, however, saw opportunity. A small squadron of pilots led by Sienna used the debris to block enemy drones in the exercise, forcing them to reroute entirely. "The calculations said failure," one Krenth officer murmured. "But they succeeded. How?" Alara shrugged. "We trust instincts that have been honed over generations. Calculations are useful, but they are not life." That evening, humans held a meeting of their own. The room was quiet except for the hum of energy fields from the station. Alara addressed her officers and pilots. "Other species will judge us. They will call us reckless, dangerous, even foolish. That is fine. What matters is that we are prepared for what is coming. We do not fight like others. We fight like humans. We adapt. We improvise. We survive." Marcus added, "And when the time comes, we make sure the galaxy notices." By the second day, tensions between philosophies grew more pronounced. Delegates from the council species demanded explanations for every human decision. Why launch scouting ships so close to the threat? Why ignore certain safety protocols? Why engage in maneuvers that seemed suicidal? Alara answered simply, "Because hesitation is death, because speed is survival, because when danger is personal, waiting is not an option." Some council members were skeptical. "You act as though the threat is already at your doorstep. It is still distant. There is time to prepare properly." Alara shook her head. "There is never enough time. The moment you think there is the moment you die. We've lived on worlds that would kill your entire species in a day. We understand urgency." Despite the disagreements, humans began earning respect. One by one, other species started to notice the results of their bold actions. Ships were modified to operate in extreme environments. Pilots displayed an intuitive understanding of hazards. Troops improvised solutions to logistical challenges that others could not. Even diplomats began to wonder if humans' unorthodox methods could be the key to survival. During a strategy session, a young human engineer named Kale Morno presented a new idea. Using magnetic fields from nearby stars, he proposed creating temporary shields to block incoming attacks. The concept was risky. Calculations suggested potential failure, but Alara approved. Within hours, the experiment succeeded, demonstrating that unconventional thinking could yield results that pure logic could not. Other species began to take notice more formally. The glacier strategists requested meetings with human officers, curious about their methods. Orcs advisors began documenting human tactics, realizing that instinct and experience offered advantages their simulations could never predict. Even the Krenth, usually aloof and skeptical, approached Alara privately. "Your people, they survive where others would fail. But they also take risks that could destroy everything. How do you decide what is worth it?" Alara considered the question. "We survive because we accept risk, but we do not act without thought. Instinct is guided by experience. Every move is measured, even if it seems reckless. That balance is what makes us effective." By the third day, the initial clash of philosophies had shifted. Humans were no longer seen merely as reckless adventurers. They were recognized as a force to be considered seriously. Delegates who had once criticized their methods now whispered about the potential advantages humans brought to the coming conflict. At the same time, humans themselves remained unflustered. They were not seeking approval. They were preparing for the threat that loomed ever closer. Every ship tested, every soldier trained, and every engineer innovated with one goal in mind: survival. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because that was who they were. Alara walked through the hangar, observing preparations. Pilots ran simulations, soldiers checked equipment, engineers fine-tuned engines. Every human moved with purpose, aware of the dangers yet unafraid. "We are ready," she said quietly to Marcus. He nodded. "And the galaxy is starting to understand why." The day ended with a final demonstration of human capabilities. Sienna Rail led a squadron through a mock engagement, using hazards and obstacles to their advantage. The result was a stunning display that left other species in awe. Where machines calculated limitations, humans defied them. Where algorithms predicted failure, humans achieved success. As night fell on the station, humans gathered to rest. Some relaxed, some reviewed data, some prepared for the next day. But all carried the same certainty. The approach of the unknown threat was personal. It would test them in ways that no other species understood. And humans, the Deathworlders, would face it with the instincts and courage that had been forged in the most dangerous corners of the galaxy. The clash of philosophies was over for now. Humans had shown the galaxy that survival required more than calculation. It required heart, courage, and the willingness to face danger directly. The other species had witnessed a force unlike any they had seen, relentless, adaptive, and fiercely human. And somewhere beyond the stars, the dark mass continued its approach, unaware that the Deathworlders were watching, waiting, and ready. The humans were prepared not just to meet the threat, but to turn the galaxy's expectations upside down. The debate of philosophy had ended. Action was coming, and the humans were already moving. The galaxy had prepared for warnings, signals, and threats in theory. But no calculation, no simulation could capture what it was like when the threat finally appeared. It came without ceremony. A mass of darkness moved across space, stretching for millions of kilometers, a swirling tide of unknown energy and organic matter. Entire fleets watched in silence, unsure of where to begin. Sensors screamed warnings: mass, speed, energy spikes beyond known limits. On Thornax, Commander Alara Voss stared at the displays, her jaw set. "This is it," she said. "We face it now." Humans were ready, not just because of preparation, but because survival was in their bones. The Deathworlders had faced storms, predators, and collapsing planets. They had faced death at every turn and survived. Others in the Council fleets hesitated. Algorithms calculated probabilities, shields and defenses deployed, but indecision lingered like a fog. Alara turned to Marcus Hain. "We don't wait, others can, we act." A human fleet of scout ships, led by Lieutenant Sienna Rail, jumped ahead of the main fleets. Their mission was simple: identify weak points, study the threat's movements, and buy time for the Allies to organize. As they approached, the nature of the threat became horrifyingly clear. The mass was not just energy or debris, it was alive. Tentacle-like structures extended outward, absorbing energy from nearby stars, drawing in matter with every movement. Every ship that came too close was pulled into a void-like current, shredded by forces that no human mind could fully calculate. Other fleets froze at a safe distance, relying on shields and automated defense systems. Humans, however, did not hesitate. Ships twisted and rolled, dodging grasping tendrils and energy spikes with instinctive precision. Pilots who had trained on worlds with deadly storms now used similar intuition to navigate the alien threat. Sienna's squadron encountered the first real test. A massive tendril shot outward, capable of crushing a ship. Her sensors screamed danger, but she acted instantly. Using a combination of speed, trajectory, and the gravitational pull of a nearby asteroid, she avoided destruction. One by one, her ships followed, weaving through hazards that computers labeled impossible. On the observation deck of Thornax, Ilara and her officers watched the live feed. "They move like they belong there," she said quietly. "And in a way, they do." On Deathworlds, this is normal. A sensor reading flashed across the screens. One of the human ships had identified a weak point in the mass. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it suggested that the threat's movement was not random. There was a structure inside, a core that could potentially be targeted. Ilara turned to her communications officer. "Send the coordinates to the Council fleets. Carefully. Let's see if they have the courage to follow." Some did. A few ships from Orcs and Glacier advanced, inspired by human boldness. Others remained at a distance, unsure if they could survive the approach. The human scouts became a living example. Fear could be controlled, danger could be turned into opportunity, and survival often demanded courage over caution. The first encounter was brutal. Tentacles lashed, energy spikes erupted, and ships were destroyed within seconds if miscalculation occurred. Yet humans pressed on, coordinating silently through instinct and training, improvising strategies in the moment. They began to map the threat, using its movements against it. Debris was redirected to block attacks, energy pulses absorbed to create temporary shields, and small tactical strikes tested its reaction. During one engagement, Lieutenant Sienna Rail performed an audacious maneuver. Her ship dove directly into the path of a massive energy surge, drawing the threat's attention. Other squadron members followed, creating a chain reaction that disrupted the threat's formation. A path opened to the inner structure, giving human engineers the chance to study it. Back on Thornax, Commander Ilara watched the reports. She smiled. "This is what I mean," she said. "Other species calculate, we act, and action wins." The Council fleets observed humans with a mixture of awe and fear. "They move with purpose," one Glacier strategist said. "And yet they survive where others would fail. How is this possible?" Ilara answered before Marcus could. "Because we do not see danger as the end, we see it as a challenge. We are prepared to face it personally every time." While humans engaged the threat, the mass responded. It adapted quickly, extending new tendrils and changing its energy patterns. It was intelligent in its own way, able to recognize patterns and counter predictable actions. Other species, fleets, struggled against it, their reliance on calculations leaving them vulnerable. But humans adapted faster. Cale Morno, the young human engineer, suggested a new tactic using nearby gravitational anomalies to amplify ship speed and deflect attacks. Within minutes, it was tested and implemented. Ships darted with impossible agility, striking the mass at vulnerable points, retreating before retaliation could reach them. One by one, human pilots learned to anticipate the threat's adaptations. Where the algorithms of other species predicted failure, human instinct led to success. Patterns emerged, showing that the mass was not invincible. It could be read, predicted, and countered with skill and courage. Despite heavy losses, the Deathworlders' methods bought critical time. Fleets that had hesitated were now able to move forward with confidence, inspired by humans' fearless engagement. Every destroyed human ship was a lesson learned for the next maneuver. Every successful strike emboldened others. A human captain, Rena Kor, saved a stranded Aquarix admiral during a particularly violent encounter. Using her ship as a shield, she maneuvered through energy pulses, risked collision with debris, and pulled the alien vessel to safety. The admiral, shaken but alive, realized that humans valued life and success through action, not hesitation. Ilara received a message from Rena. It was short. "We're holding the line. Core is exposed. You can strike." She transmitted the coordinates to the Council fleets. Slowly, ships from Glacier, Krenth, and Aquarix advanced, guided by human insight. Where they had once relied on calculations, they now relied on the instincts humans demonstrated, learning that courage and adaptability could achieve what algorithms alone could not. The first engagement ended with the alien mass retreating slightly, disrupted by human tactics. It was a temporary success, but it proved the Deathworlders' point. Fear could be controlled, danger could be navigated, and survival demanded action, even when all else seemed hopeless. In the aftermath, humans did not celebrate. They analyzed the battle, studied the threat's patterns, and refined strategies. Every decision, every maneuver was reviewed. Mistakes were noted, not punished. Wins were understood, not glorified. The lesson was simple. The galaxy's survival depended on understanding the threat better than it understood itself. Alara convened her officers. "This was only the beginning," she said. "We've learned how it moves, we've learned its patterns, we've bought time. But the real test is still ahead. We survive because we adapt. We survive because we face danger personally, and the galaxy will need us to continue." Marcus nodded. "Other species will follow our lead now." Alara looked at the stars, at the dark mass retreating temporarily. "They will, but we don't lead to be followed. We lead because it is necessary. The galaxy survives because we act when others hesitate." As night fell on Thornax, humans prepared for the next engagement. Engineers recalibrated ships, pilots trained for new hazards, and soldiers ran simulations of extreme scenarios. Every human knew that survival depended not just on courage, but on learning, adapting, and acting with precision under pressure. Other species had begun to understand the value of Deathworlder instinct. Where they had hesitated, humans acted. Where they had feared, humans improvised. Where they had calculated, humans survived. The first contact had ended, but the threat remained. And the Deathworlders, scarred but unbowed, were ready to face it again, personally, decisively, and without hesitation. The galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary. Humans were not just participants in the coming war. They were the standard of courage, ingenuity, and relentless survival. And as the dark mass pulsed and shifted in space, the Deathworlders prepared to prove it once more. The dark mass of the threat had grown bolder. Its tendrils reached farther, its energy pulses became faster, and its movements suggested a terrifying intelligence. The galaxy's fleets, guided by calculations and shields, still struggled to adapt. Many ships had been destroyed, leaving fleets scattered and unsure. Panic whispered among the ranks of those unprepared to face the unknown directly. But the humans, the Deathworlders, thrived in this chaos. Commander Alara Voss stood on the bridge of the flagship Iron Resolve, overlooking a formation of human ships and allies who had finally begun to trust their instincts. The massive screen showed the threat advancing, tendrils coiling like snakes, reaching into space to consume anything in its path. The station's sensors blared warnings, but Alara's expression remained calm. "This is the moment," she said. "Time for action." "Everyone else hesitates. We will act." Her second-in-command, Marcus Haynes, scanned the reports. "We've identified multiple weak points along its core," he said, "but it's adapting faster than we can calculate." Alara nodded. "Then we improvise faster than it can adapt." "That's what we do." The first wave of the human-led fleet moved forward. Ships from Glacier and Aquarix followed cautiously, relying on the humans' example. Other species remained at a distance, their fear of failure stronger than their desire to survive. But humans, trained by Deathworlds, treated the environment itself as a weapon. Storms from nearby gas giants were used to mask movements, debris fields became shields, and energy currents were redirected to create temporary barriers. Each maneuver required split-second decisions, yet humans executed them with precision, instinct, and daring. Lieutenant Sienna Rail led a squadron into a particularly dangerous zone, where an unstable asteroid cluster orbited dangerously close to the threat. Sensors warned that even the smallest miscalculation could destroy the squadron. But Sienna, smiling with adrenaline, said, "We've faced worse. Let's go." Her squadron weaved through the chaos. Explosions and energy spikes tore through space, yet they pressed forward, identifying weaknesses in the threat's outer tendrils. Small tactical strikes delayed its advance, forcing it to expend energy-defending areas it had not yet controlled. Meanwhile, on the flagship, Cale Morno and the engineering team worked furiously. Using gravitational anomalies and the chaotic movements of energy pulses, they designed a device capable of amplifying the fleet's firepower while protecting their ships. It was risky. If the calculations were off, the device could backfire, but humans trusted experience as much as science. Within hours, the device was ready. Alara addressed the fleet. "We strike together. Timing, instinct, and courage will guide us. We do not hesitate." We do not fear, we act personally, decisively, and relentlessly. The turning point came during the first coordinated assault on the core. Human ships darted between tendrils, firing precision strikes while using environmental hazards as cover. Allied ships, inspired by humans' fearlessness, followed the lead. Even the skeptical species began to act boldly, mirroring Deathworlder tactics. One human squadron, led by Captain Rena Kor, performed a daring maneuver. They allowed themselves to appear vulnerable, drawing tendrils toward them. At the exact moment, hidden ships struck from the side, hitting exposed segments of the core. The attack was risky and several ships were destroyed, but it worked. The threat recoiled, its structure destabilized. From the observation deck, Alara observed the result. "Courage and instinct beat fear and hesitation every time," she said. Even with this success, the threat adapted quickly. It retracted tendrils, shifted energy patterns, and launched counterattacks that damaged several human ships. But the Deathworlders responded immediately. Damaged teams repaired hulls in real time, pilots adjusted trajectories mid-flight, and engineers modified devices while under fire. Elsewhere in the fleet, a young human engineer named Lyra Tan devised a plan to turn a hazardous nearby nebula into a weapon. Energy currents in the nebula could be redirected to create a massive shockwave. It was risky, miscalculations could destroy the fleet, but Alara approved. With precision, human ships navigated through the nebula, triggering the shockwave just as the threat advanced. The effect was devastating. Tentacles were torn apart, energy pulses disrupted, and the threat staggered. Ships from other species pressed forward, emboldened by the humans' daring. Where fear had slowed them before, courage now drove them. The moment of unity was brief but powerful. Humans had shown the galaxy that survival demanded more than strategy. It demanded courage, adaptability, and the willingness to face danger directly. One by one, other species began to contribute in ways they never could have imagined. Orcs ships used water currents from nearby gas giants as shields. Glacier vessels redirected energy from their crystal cores to enhance firepower. Even the insected Krenth coordinated their attacks with the humans, learning patterns and improvising tactics mid-battle. Alara watched the result. The galaxy is fighting with us not because it wants to, but because it has no choice, and because we lead by example, not orders. The battle raged for hours. Energy pulses erupted, ships maneuvered in impossible patterns, and debris tore through space like shards of glass. Humans lost ships, and every loss was mourned, but each loss also taught a lesson. Strategies were refined in real time, improvisation became instinct, and morale soared. At one point, Sienna Rail's squadron encountered a new hazard, a massive energy tentacle that moved faster than anything they had seen. Her ship was nearly destroyed, but she used the hazard itself to her advantage. By skimming the edge of the energy surge, she redirected its path, causing it to strike the threat's own core. A massive explosion rocked the dark mass, further destabilizing it. Back on the flagship, Alara and Marcus exchanged a look. "That's why humans survive," Marcus said. "Instinct, courage, and a willingness to act personally. No one else could have done that." The turning point was clear. The threat was still powerful, still dangerous, but the tide had shifted. Humans had shown the galaxy that bravery and ingenuity could turn the impossible into opportunity. Where others hesitated, humans acted. Where others calculated, humans survived. Even the most skeptical species began to recognize the value of Deathworlder methods. Council delegates whispered among themselves, acknowledging that humans were more than a reckless species. They were the key to survival. Alara knew the battle was far from over. The dark mass had retreated temporarily, but it would return smarter, stronger, and more dangerous. Preparation, adaptation, and courage would be required again. She turned to Marcus. "We've given the galaxy a chance. The real fight is still ahead." But now others understand what it means to act personally. They've seen what survival truly requires. Marcus nodded. "And they will follow, or they will be left behind." As night fell on Thornax, the human fleet repaired, refueled, and strategized. Engineers worked tirelessly, pilots trained for the next engagement, and soldiers ran drills under simulated extreme conditions. Every human knew that survival depended not only on courage, but also on learning, adapting, and acting decisively in the face of danger. Across the galaxy, the turning point became a lesson. Other species began to adopt Deathworlder tactics. The rigid, cautious calculations that had once dominated strategy were now complemented by human instinct and improvisation. The galaxy had learned a crucial truth. Survival required more than technology. It required heart, bravery, and the willingness to face danger directly. And somewhere beyond the stars, the dark mass pulsed and shifted. It had learned that the humans were dangerous, adaptive, and relentless. The Deathworlders had shown it, and the galaxy, that no threat could intimidate a species that had survived death worlds, that had faced impossible odds, and that refused to back down. The turning point had arrived. The battle was not yet won, but the Deathworlders had shown the way. Courage, adaptability, and personal commitment could turn the tide where logic alone could not. And as the threat retreated to regroup, the humans prepared to meet it again, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. The galaxy held its breath. After days of relentless skirmishes, the dark mass of the threat had grown bolder, stronger, and more dangerous. Its tendrils stretched across vast regions of space, consuming debris, energy, and anything in its path. Entire fleets had been battered. Ships from multiple species had fallen. Panic whispered through the ranks of those who had hesitated in the first encounters. Yet the humans, the Deathworlders, remained steady. Commander Alara Voss stood on the bridge of the flagship Iron Resolve, her eyes scanning the battlefield. Human ships were positioned across the front lines, guiding Allied fleets with instinct, courage, and experience honed on worlds that demanded survival at all costs. Marcus Hayne, her second-in-command, studied the display. "The threat has adapted," he said. "It's faster, more aggressive. Some fleets are retreating." Alara's eyes hardened. "Then we advance. Those who hesitate may fall. We act personally, decisively, and relentlessly. That is what humans do." The Deathworlder fleet moved forward. Ships from allied species followed, inspired by humans' daring. Even the most cautious vessels began to emulate Deathworlder tactics, improvising in real time, using environmental hazards as weapons, and acting without hesitation when opportunity arose. Lieutenant Sienna Rail led a squadron into the center of the threat. Tentacles whipped and energy pulses surged, but Sienna's squadron moved with impossible precision. They used the chaos to their advantage, guiding the threat into a carefully prepared trap. Cale Morno and his engineering team had devised a device capable of amplifying coordinated strikes. Using gravitational anomalies and redirected energy currents, the device could focus attacks on the core, weakening it with every hit. It was risky. Any miscalculation could destroy the fleet, but human instincts and calculations balanced perfectly. Alara gave the order. "Now, strike with everything we have, no hesitation, no fear." The fleet surged forward. Ships darted between tentacles, using debris fields and energy surges to shield themselves while striking weak points. Explosions erupted as energy pulses met concentrated fire. The dark mass roared in space, a living, intelligent force struggling to defend itself. Captain Rena Kaur executed a daring maneuver. She drew the attention of one of the largest tendrils, weaving dangerously close to its core. Her ship was almost destroyed, but the sacrifice allowed other squads to target the weak point. One by one, concentrated strikes hit the mass, destabilizing it further. Across the fleet, allied species followed human tactics. Glacier ships redirected crystal energy to enhance firepower. Orcs vessels manipulated magnetic currents for shielding and movement. Even Krenth units coordinated precise, rapid attacks. The galaxy, once hesitant and fearful, now acted with courage inspired by humans. Yet the dark mass was relentless. It lashed out, destroying ships that miscalculated or hesitated. Explosions lit up space as debris scattered like stars. Humans adapted instantly, improvising in real time. Damaged teams repaired hulls mid-flight. Engineers modified devices under fire. Pilots maneuvered with instinct, turning hazards into weapons. The tide began to turn. Weak points widened. Energy patterns destabilized. Tentacles flailed in disarray. The dark mass, once a terrifying, unstoppable force, now struggled to survive. In a daring final maneuver, Sienna Rail led a small squadron directly into the core. Her ship weaved between energy surges and collapsing tendrils, guiding Allied firepower to strike simultaneously from multiple angles. Explosions tore through the mass as its structure began to collapse. Back on Iron Resolve, Alara watched the displays, her hands gripping the console. "This is it," she said. "All units focus fire, do not stop, we finish this personally." Marcus nodded. "The fleet is responding, we can do it." Every human ship acted in perfect coordination. Engineers on the ground adjusted energy amplifiers. Pilots flew with daring precision. Soldiers guided allies in strategic strikes. The dark mass reeled, weakened beyond repair. Finally, with a massive surge of combined firepower, the core of the threat collapsed. Energy pulses dissipated, tentacles fell lifeless, and the mass disintegrated into harmless fragments drifting across space. Silence followed, a stunned, breathless silence. Humans and their allies floated among the wreckage, alive but exhausted. Ships were damaged, lives had been lost, yet survival and victory was theirs. Alara allowed herself a moment to exhale. "We've done it," she said quietly. Marcus looked at her, awe in his eyes. "They'll remember this. The galaxy will remember what humans can do." Indeed, across the Council fleets, the realization spread. Humans were not just fearless warriors. They were survivalists, innovators, and leaders by example. Their courage, adaptability, and willingness to act personally had turned the tide when others hesitated. The Orcs admiral, still recovering from the battle, approached Alara. "Commander Voss," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I see now. Your people, they are not reckless. They are extraordinary. You have taught the galaxy a lesson in courage, strategy, and survival." Alara nodded. "We did what had to be done, not for glory, not for recognition, but because it was necessary. Survival demanded it." Allied species gathered to honor the Deathworlders' bravery. Glacier strategists approached humans to learn their methods. Krenth commanders sought guidance in improvisation. Even the Council delegates, who had doubted them, recognized that humans had changed the galaxy's understanding of war, danger, and survival. Yet the Deathworlders did not linger in celebration. They repaired, resupplied, and prepared for whatever came next. They understood a truth few others did: threats never truly ended. Survival required constant vigilance, courage, and adaptability. Alara walked among the crew, observing engineers, pilots, and soldiers. "We survived because we acted personally," she said. "Because we trusted our instincts, learned from our mistakes, and faced danger without hesitation. That is what makes humans different. That is what makes us essential." Marcus joined her. "And the galaxy has learned that too." "They respect us now," Alara smiled faintly. "Respect is earned. We didn't earn it for ourselves. We earned it for the galaxy, and the galaxy may need us again." A young engineer, Liratan, approached with a repaired device. "Commander, the fleet's weapons are ready. We've analyzed the threat's fragments. If anything remains, we can handle it." Alara nodded. "Good. Let's ensure the galaxy is safe, not because they asked us to, but because it is our responsibility." In the aftermath, humans sent scouts to study the remnants of the threat. Every piece of data was collected, every pattern analyzed. The galaxy had survived, but the lesson remained clear. Courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to act personally were more powerful than calculations, algorithms, or fear. Other species began to emulate human methods. Fleets adapted, officers studied Deathworlder tactics, and a new understanding of danger and survival spread. Humans had not only defeated the threat, they had redefined how the galaxy faced impossible odds. Alara looked out at the stars, now calm after the storm of battle. The dark mass was gone, scattered into harmless fragments, but the galaxy had changed forever. Humans had proven that instinct, courage, and relentless determination were as vital as any weapon or shield. A message went out from Thornax, broadcast across the galaxy. "We take threats personally, you should too. Survive, adapt, act, that is what makes life worth living." Humans, scarred but unbowed, returned to their worlds not for glory but for preparation, for rest, for training, for survival. They had faced the impossible, turned the tide, and earned the respect of every species that had witnessed their courage. The galaxy would remember them, not just as warriors, but as the embodiment of hope, resilience, and humanity. And somewhere deep in space, where fragments of the dark mass drifted, the universe seemed to pause. For the first time, a species had faced death, chaos, and the unknown, and had not just survived, but had led the galaxy to triumph. The call had gone out to all species. Humans had answered personally, and their legend, forged in the fires of death, worlds, and battle, had just begun.